Hi everybody, welcome to the Facebook Live online recovery support group. My name is Kelly Kirk and I am a certified peer support specialist and recovery coach in Richmond County, North Carolina. So welcome. Today I thought I would talk about a serious matter, which is opioid overdose. And so we'll get into that, but let me just read our quick introduction real quick. So this is the Facebook Live online recovery support group supported by the Sandhills Opioid Response Consortium. It's a forum where people in recovery can come together. We are here to encourage and support individuals in their recovery journey by sharing our own experience, strength, and hope. Our meetings consist of daily readings, meditations, devotionals, and open discussions. We only ask that when sharing, you adhere to the rules of the page. All recovery paths are welcome, and please feel free to share in the comment box right there. Hi, Chase and Artie. How are y'all doing? So, as I was saying, I thought we would talk about overdose, because with the COVID-19 coronavirus, overdose deaths and overdoses have like skyrocketed. And I think it has to do with, the obvious reasons. People are cooped up at home. People have lost their jobs. People are out of work. Kids are out of school. There's a lot of added pressure at home. You got families cooped up. The kids are like driving people crazy in the house. They're bored. They can't do as much. They can't have their after school activities. Like everything is off. And so people are drinking more and people are using drugs more. And if you're already someone that struggled with, addiction in the past, then there's a good chance that when you're in a stressful environment that it's going to flare up. And there's a lot of risk factors involved. So I've got some statistics and we're going to go over some things that are good to know about overdose and what to look for and all that. Because it's like we all have family members or friends or someone we know, at least someone we know that's got a problem with addiction. So I feel like it's good for us to get this information out there because it can save lives. So nearly 72,000 Americans died from drug overdoses in 2019. And the deaths from drug overdoses remain higher than the peak yearly death totals ever recorded for car accidents, guns, or AIDS. So more people are dying of drug overdoses than lots of things that you wouldn't think. And you don't really hear that much about it, but it's like 72,000 Americans died in 2019 of drug overdoses. That is outrageous. It just blows my mind. But it says the increase in overdoses in recent years has pushed down the overall life expectancy in the United States. That's how bad it is. And apparently drug deaths in America fell for the first time in 25 years back in 2018. But they've risen to record numbers as of last year, and they're continuing to climb. So what is an overdose? An overdose happens when too much of a drug or combination of drugs overwhelms the brain and interrupts the body's natural drive to breathe. So, people can overdose on lots of things. You can overdose on Tylenol, alcohol, mixing drugs is a big thing. If you're already taking this prescription and then you add this other prescription, that amplifies both of them and they can interact in a dangerous way. But opioids in particular, they act right directly on your breathing. They slow the breathing. What they do is they bond to receptors in your brain, the same receptors that control your breathing. So when you're fine, you're normal, the receptors that handle your breathing are doing their thing. But then when you take opioids, the opioids get in there too. And it slows your breathing. It's like people that die of an overdose, they don't die like that. They slowly, their breathing like gets shallow and slow, and you're not breathing deep, and you're breathing like intermittently, and then pretty soon that starves your system of oxygen, and it can stop your lungs altogether. You just stop breathing altogether. It can stop your heart, and then finally your brain, and then you die. So it like slows down your heart rate, your breathing. It says too many opioids in the brain can cause someone to stop breathing, because when opioids reach the brain, they fit into certain receptors, which is what I was saying, and those receptors also control your automatic breathing. You will become unconscious, slip into a coma, and then die. This rarely happens suddenly. After the drug was used, people will slowly stop breathing until they die. And you often hear about, the guy was found with a needle hanging out of his arm. So you think like, oh, he died right when he shot up. No, he didn't. His breathing slowed down, and then he died like that. So I guess the point is that there is some time in there between when the person administers the drug and then they actually die. So that's why we're going to go over a little bit later, like the signs of overdose. But, drug overdose is the leading cause of injury death in the United States. Among people 25 to 64 years old, drug overdoses cause more deaths than motor vehicle accidents. About 60% of overdose deaths involve prescription drugs. One of the most common places family members find a loved one who has overdosed is in their room alone. An overdose usually occurs within 1 to 3 hours after using the drug. And overdoses can happen with first-time use, which is scary, because then, you're using drugs for the first time and you can die. It's like so dangerous. So let's talk about some risks. When the risks of overdose increases. So someone using opioids while taking antidepressants, alcohol, Xanax, Valium, benzos, anything, or stimulants like cocaine. So anytime you mix drugs, especially benzos or Xanax or Valium, those things that are supposed to calm you down and calm your nerves. If you mix those with pain pills, you're putting yourself at high risk. You're increasing your risk of death. And, I'm in recovery myself. And I used to do that every day. I used to take Xanax and pain pills. I wasn't like all slumped over in a corner. I was functioning. I was raising my kids. And that was just, it became part of my life. But when I look back on it now and I read all these statistics and all these dangers, it really makes me feel grateful and blessed that I'm still here, And I read that 30% of overdoses involving opioids also involve benzos. So that's, and benzos are really common. It's easy, if you're stressed out, go to your doctor, ask for some Xanax, ask for some Valium. You're playing with fire, though, because those things are super addictive. And it's dangerous to get off of them. You got to, get off of them under medical supervision. Okay, I'm getting off track, sorry. Okay, another risk is someone who uses opioids after not using for a while. For example, someone goes to detox, they want to get straightened out, and they end up leaving and they go back home. Or someone was a heavy drug user and they went to jail And so now they get out of jail and they think that they can go back to using that high dose they were using before, because you build up a tolerance to drugs. So if you're away from the drugs, you come back to using them and you go right to that high dose that you were at before, you can overdose from that. So people who relapse are at risk because they once had a high tolerance to drugs. So when they slip and go back to using, they think they can use that big dose again. Someone uses heroin that is mixed with other dangerous substances, like the powerful opioid fentanyl. Fentanyl is everywhere now. They're using it. It's like super cheap. It's coming in from Mexico. It's coming in from China. And all these drug dealers are pressing it into pills that look just like Xanax, that look just like, all different other kind of, they're putting it in stuff you would never, ever suspect. And, I had a client that, she thought she was buying some Xanax from a friend, and she blacked out. A bunch of really bad, life-changing things happened to her, and turns out it was fentanyl, and so even if, someone gives you a pill, you don't know what's in that pill. You don't know if that's fentanyl or not. There's a lot of fake pills out there right now. It's super cheap. You can cut it into, heroin. You can cut it into ice. You can cut it into coke. You can make it into pills. It's crazy. And fentanyl is 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine. So you think about, we've all been in the hospital or had surgery or something, and we get a morphine. You got that little button on the hospital bed. I used to love that button. But that's a strong feeling, that morphine. Imagine 100 times stronger than that. People are dying like instantly from this. I mean, it's crazy. You just don't know what you're getting. Another person that would increase their risk of overdose is someone who uses pure heroin after they've been using heroin that's been cut. So again, if you're buying drugs off the street, you do not know what you're getting, and everyone thinks it's not going to happen to them, but it's happening to somebody, so you got to be really careful. You just don't know what you're getting. Another person that increases their risk is someone who is sick with a cold, the flu, asthma, or if they smoke. These factors reduce the amount of oxygen they would normally get and can weaken your breathing even more. So, and I can remember being on, opioids and thinking, laying there and thinking, you have to kind of force yourself to breathe because you just want to, your chest just wants to relax and just, and you're like, you got to remember to breathe on purpose. It's scary. Okay, signs of overdose may include small, constricted, pinpoint pupils. If you're talking to your nephew, he comes in the house or whatever, and his eye, the black part of his eyes are super tiny, he could be on drugs. Or potentially overdosing if they get really, really tiny. A sign of overdose: falling asleep or loss of consciousness, slow, shallow breathing, choking or gurgling sounds, having a limp body, pale blue or cold skin, no response to a sternal rub. You take your knuckles and rub right here on the person's bone, and if they don't react to that, then they could be overdosing. The person won't wake up. They're passed out, no response to yelling and screaming at them. They're just not doing anything. There's a good chance they're overdosing. Clammy, cool skin. Their body's very limp. Blue skin starting around the lips and fingertips. Face very pale. Their pulse is slow, erratic, or stopped. Foaming at the mouth. Vomiting. Seizures or convulsions. And another one I know is loud snoring after using drugs is a warning sign. I had a lady where her and her husband, great couple, but they were drug users, and they went and got some heroin, and the kids went to sleep. They were alone in the living room. They were just gonna have a little fun, and you know, they did the heroin, and then he fell asleep on the living room floor, and she was like, oh, I'm not gonna make him get up, like he's tired, he worked or whatever. So she went to bed, and she got up a couple times during the night. She checked on him. He was breathing. He was snoring really loud, she said, like a really strange, loud, you know, like deep, nasally snore. But in her mind, you know, hey, he's breathing. I hear him. You know, he's fine. Just let him sleep. But then in the morning, he was cold and he was dead. And it was like really bad. She ended up having 2 little kids and being on her own, and she had an addiction problem, but she's doing much better now. But it just goes to show that, you know, we're all vulnerable, and we all take chances, and you know, you just never know. You just got to be really careful. So let's talk about what to do if you think someone's overdosing. It can be hard to tell if a person is just really high or if they're actually having an overdose. It says if you aren't sure, it's best to treat it like an overdose. You could save their life. So number 1, call 911 immediately. Number 2, administer Naloxone or Narcan, if you've heard of that, if you have it. Try to keep the person awake and breathing. Lay the person on their side to prevent choking, and stay with them until the emergency workers arrive. Okay, so what is Naloxone or Narcan? Narcan is a safe medication that can quickly stop an opioid overdose. It's either injected into the muscle, usually by EMS, or sprayed into the nose, and it rapidly blocks the effects of the opioid on the body. It's designed to reverse the opioid overdose. So what it does is that the Narcan goes into the bloodstream, and it binds to the opioids, and it blocks them. So it like knocks them completely out. It says it can very quickly restore normal breathing to a person whose breathing has been slowed or stopped as a result of overdosing with heroin or prescription opioid pain pills. There's one thing you got to watch out for, though, and this is something that an ES director told about or told us about, and it's that, you know, if someone's overdosing and they're Narcan, they're going to lose their right away. I mean, they'll be like snap back to reality like this, and that's very uncomfortable. If you high having this crime, and you even realize you're overdosing, and the next thing you know, ES is over you, they're put can in you, you're like awake, have your wits out you know, first of all, you're going to into withdrawal because your body is so used to those opioids, you're going to having these withdrawal symptoms, and you're, you know, some get mad because they, you know, they spend all the money on drugs, and now you took it away in a snap, and so go out and more drugs right away, either get high or get rid of the symptoms. The thing is that they don't realize is that if Narcan is still in their system, and it's in the system for an hour, it's going to continue to block any drugs that you try to take. So the person's going to get high and they're not feeling it because they still have that Narcan, and they may do more and more and more. And what happens is all of a sudden the Narcan leaves the system, and all those drugs you hit you, you overdose again. So if you're around and you get Narcan, or if you know anybody might have, just make sure you tell them to at least wait until the Narcan wears off. You know, if they have to use again, at least wait wear off. Because if not, they could die. It's always good to have Narcan handy because you never know when you might need it. I give it to my clients. You know, we get a certain amount and to my clients, and I've got some stories. You know, someone came over their house and overdosed on the couch, and they had Narcan, gave them, and they saved the person's life. So Narcan or Naloxone is like a miracle with it versus overdose. It saves lives, but it's a prescription drug. You can buy it at pharmacy, and a lot of cases you don't have to have a prescription. I know CVS and Walgreens now let buy it with a prescription. You know, almost everyone knows one struggling addiction. So, you know, having access to Narcan, I highly recommend it. And one last thing. When we're talking about preventing overdoses, it's important to bring up a newer law that's called Good Samaritan law. And basically, it used to be like, you know, let's say you've got two people, they're in an abandoned house or something, and they're shooting up. They're shooting up. I shoot my friend, my overdose. I'm scared. They're dead. I'm the only one with them. You know, people like leave, and their friend will die because they're so afraid that they're getting in trouble that they don't call 911 on friend. And I've heard these and people that have to live with that. You know, they didn't know what in the moment, they're afraid. You know, when they panic, so they left. Now they feel that this person's death is their fault. So the Good Samaritan law prevents that. It says under North Carolina's Good Samaritan law, you may not be prosecuted certain drug offenses if you seek medical assistance for someone experiencing a drug-related overdose by contacting 911 or emergency medical services personnel. I believe that you are the first person to seek medical assistance for overdose victim. You may provide a name to the 911 system upon arrival. Enforcement officers were not ready at your location. This is basically what it boils down to is not being in control. If you call police on someone overdosing, you don't have to give your name. And this protects people from the very situation that I'm describing. So I think we're making strides in the right direction. We don't want people to if they can't call for an ambulance. We want them to feel, you know, it's okay to do it. So, I think that's about all for today. But we're going to talk about the overdose because COVID, you know, are getting worse and people are really struggling. And I like if we can tools, knowledge that will help people.